All right, this next section is going to correlate a little bit with EMDR, and that is because we are going to take a look a little bit at the brain. Now, I am by no means an expert on the brain at all, so I'm basically going to peel the layers off, and we're going to do this in a really simplified version. So, this is my not so great drawing of a brain. Now, I know that for some of you who are in my marriage and family class, you might have seen this already. But this is my drawing of the brain. We've got the front of the brain over here. We've got the back of the brain. So anytime that any experience comes into our life, positive, negative, traumatic, normal, whatever it is, it literally comes in through the front of our mind. That's where things come in. So it's very common to hear somebody say, at the front of my mind, there's this going on. And that's because all of our experiences come into our mind at the front of our mind. Now, our bodies were created, or our brains and minds were created in such a way that during the night, our body or our brain shifts back and forth between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. And what it does is it processes through all the memories that we go through in a given day. It could be, like I said, positive memories, negative memories, a fight that you had with your parents, good news from the job that you're working at. Whatever it is, our brain processes through those memories while we're sleeping during that REM cycle, rapid eye movement cycle, and it takes those memories and those experiences and it places them from the front of the brain and moves it all the way to the back of the brain, and it becomes the memory. Now, the thing that's important to remember about memories is that memories are supposed to be fuzzy. They're supposed to be something that happened in the past that you don't necessarily remember vivid details about. It's something that you can pull up and say, hey, I remember this, but it's not always incredibly vivid at the front of your mind. Now, what happens when a traumatic situation or a very volatile situation or crisis or those sorts of things happen is that when our brain goes to reprocess those memories at night, it's like it's flooded. And while it might process some memories from the day, it's not actually able to move that really big, overwhelming memory or experience to the back of your brain. And so what it does is it basically loops in your brain. What your brain is doing is it's trying to make sense of what happened. And so when we hear about people that have PTSD or traumatic situations that they feel like they're living, that the past trauma is actually in their present, in a way, it kind of is, because their brain is looping, trying to make sense of what's going on, rather than that experience becoming a memory in the back of their mind. It is in the front of their mind and they're living it. The problem with it is that they have no control over what triggers it. It might be a sight or a sound or a smell or a specific person, and all of a sudden, before they know it, that memory is triggered, and it's like it stops this looping process, and it just sits there, and you feel like everything that happened in the past is currently living in the present. So that might look like you're having panic attacks. It might look like anxiety. It could look like depression. It could look like anger, all of those sorts of things. And it's coming out because we feel like our past is in the present. See, now what happens is when a traumatic situation or a very volatile situation or just an overwhelming situation happens, when it comes into the front of our mind, if we have somebody safe to talk to, if we have a counselor or a trusted adult who is able to process through that with us, what we're able to do is then quickly move that memory from the front of our mind to the back of our mind. And it becomes a memory rather than having to actually keep that in the front of our mind. So when we talk in terms of EMDR, what happens is that we go back in with that process and we start to stimulate both sides of the brain to bring that memory up and allow us a safe place to reprocess whatever that memory is and then tuck it to the back of our minds. It's quite an innovative process. It's quite effective, quite simple. It is something that you do have to be trained in and have a special certification in. But in my personal and professional experience, I have found EMDR and just that simple knowledge of the brain to be incredibly insightful.